Hello and welcome to the Grid Roundtable 2024 IndyCar Predictions Edition. My name is Jackson Lambros from Outlab Media, and with me is Alex Anderson from the Gay Racing Podcast, Ben Schneider from Grid Encore and LastCar.info, and Kobe Lambeth from Grid Tonight. Hello, gentlemen. Before we get started here, want to drop a big thank you to our Patreon investors. That's Colin, Deshelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew. Would like to remind you guys, you can also invest in Grid Network by clicking on the link in our video description, or you can do a one-time investment through Buy Me a Coffee or YouTube Super Chats if you feel so inclined. And be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon so you don't miss any content from us for all things motorsports, F1, NASCAR, and now IndyCar is getting its turn for the roundtable before we get it involved into the Grid Championship. Gentlemen, let's get started. The biggest name right here, as we say howdy to Dylan McCollum. The biggest name we got to talk about here is Alex Palou. And for some, current party included, IndyCar was pullover pretty soon in the season. Won 5 out of the 17 races. In fairness, by IndyCar standards, that's incredibly impressive, especially when you add in the 10 podiums on top of that, worst finish of 8th. It's more than the wins. It's the consistency that this guy had. Now, gets the DHL sponsorship from the Andretti 28 crew. No ties to McLaren, although those legal battles could be far from over. So the question here is, 2021, Palou won the championship. 22 had legal challenges and had a down year. Alex, 2023, he won a championship. So for 2024, is it going to be a kind of copy of this pattern that we're seeing and it's an off year upon us? Or do we think maybe we could see Alex breaking the chain here and potentially have a back-to-back championship on our hands?
I think it's hard to argue against him contending to go back-to-back championships here. I mean, if we're going to have a pattern here, we better be watching out for some legal trouble because I don't know, that would not be good for Alex Palou. But I see no reason that Alex Palou couldn't just continue the success that he's had recently in IndyCar. I mean, he was the guy to beat last year. Joseph Newgarden was on the ovals, but through the overall season, Alex Palou was the guy, and he proved it. He won the championship, a race early, so I don't see that changing. I don't know if he is going to win the championship. I think it's too early for that. It's far from pullover. Haven't even started, but it's going to be fun to watch for sure.
I can't believe he only won 5 races last year. I mean, it just feels like he was even more dominant than that. And I guess in many respects he was with all those podiums. And like you mentioned, Jackson, your worst finish throughout the entire year was in 8th place. I mean, how many drivers on the grid would, just get one 8th place finish and say, we had a great day. We can take a lot to, use that as momentum for the rest of the season here. If they get a result like that early in the season, they'd be ecstatic. For Palou, that was his worst finish of the year. That was something that, he didn't want to see at all because he knew he was capable of wins and podiums all the time. So, you couple that with the fact that he's picked up a DHL sponsorship now and coming off of the first time in, 16 years, I guess, if you throw the Champ Car years with Sebastian Bourdais in there, really 18 more accurately with the IRL history that IndyCar can trace itself back to, that we had a champion already crowned and already clinched before going into the final race even. And then you have Palou picking up this sponsorship now on top of that. I think that there's absolutely no reason to believe that he couldn't just go back out and repeat again. We're going to talk about who might be his closest contender. I know Alex was alluding to it a little bit, and we'll talk about him very shortly here. But it's not that he doesn't have any competition, but I think it's going to be very hard for that competition to stop him given everything that he's got going for him right now.
Yeah, and last season, it really seemed like Alex Palou had a golden horseshoe the entire season. Like you were saying, Ben, about the 8th place finish. If 8th place is your worst finish of the year, think about, all the things that could go wrong throughout the year, and for him not to have a DNF, and even Toronto, when he lost a part of his front wing there, people thought, that was going to, put him down the running order, but he was still able to salvage a great day from that. And the amount of drive Palou had, many great drives throughout the year, and we add in all the luck. It was just a extremely dominant season, like you were just saying, Jackson. By IndyCar standards, is very impressive. And in 2024, would not surprise me to see Alex Palou in the fight again for the championship. But one thing that's going to be very interesting is that Chip Ganassi Racing is expanding to 5 full-time entries with rookie Kiffin Simpson. And time again in racing, we've seen when a team expands, sometimes it can take away from the other cars, and we could see a dip in performance. So I think that would be my one concern about, saying that maybe Alex Palou may not defend his championship in 2024 because when they're adding more resources to Kiffin Simpson's, right, maybe that could take away some of the speed from the other entries that Chip Ganassi Racing.
We're going to get into the rookie talk a bit more here, but I do think that's an interesting thing, as Adam says. Hi, guys. Ready for the 2024 IndyCar season. Palou, huge target on his back. Going to have to perform strong in 2024. Absolutely agree to that. Kobe, going back to that, I think it's just a level of confidence from Chip Ganassi of if all of our guys are performing, if Scott Dixon is able to find his way to the front, if Marcus Armstrong is able to win Rookie of the Year without even doing half of the races. Remember, he didn't do any of the ovals last year. There's a level of confidence, I think, for this team that he has that we're able to balance this and still be championship caliber. But I absolutely think Palou is going to be in that same championship form as we've seen. But I think the real question is, who's going to maybe stand up and try and keep that from happening? And I think while Palou had more wins, there's one guy we got to talk about that was incredibly close. And that was your 4-time winner last year, almost swept all the ovals, Team Penske's Joseph Newgarden. Again, 4 wins, including the Indianapolis 500, but did not match up to the consistency that Newgarden had. That ended a streak of him being runner-up in the championship for the last 3 seasons. He finished 5th in the standings. That was all after, however, he was the 2019 Series championship. That was his 2nd championship. So the big question then, Ben, do we think Newgarden is one of the top 2 drivers to contend for the championship again?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, if you have to take Palou versus the field here, I think the field's top contender would be Joseph Newgarden's, almost solely based on how he dominated the ovals last year. And of course, now we're ending the season on the Nashville Super Speedway Oval rather than the street circuit. So if it comes down to a close or tight championship battle, maybe that plays in Newgarden's favor. Of course, he's going to be a threat to go back-to-back at Indianapolis, I'm sure, as well. And he's been here before. He's won a championship in this series before. And, I think that he's absolutely going to be a threat here, along with maybe a couple of others. But, certainly if you're looking at who has the most energy behind him to take the fight to Alex Palou, Joseph Newgarden's dominance on the ovals last year. Of course, we talked about Palou's dominance overall, but Newgarden really owned the ovals. Got a couple more added to the schedule this year. Maybe that plays in Newgarden's favor, and we might actually get a championship battle that goes down to the final race.
Yeah, Ben, and considering how dominant Joseph Newgarden has been in the NTT INDYCAR series, I still find it hard to believe he hasn't won a championship since 2019. Of course, he's a 2-time champion, got his first one in 2017, but I totally agree with what you were saying there. Especially looking at the finale, Nashville Super Speedway, if Joseph Newgarden is still mathematically eligible for the championship, heading to the final round, his home race, what would be more special, than winning a championship at home? And
I'm streaming right now.
You're winning a championship at home, and I think that would be a really special thing for Joseph Newgarden. And overall, I think he's going to be more fired up than ever to try to get that 3rd IndyCar championship. I think he very well could be the driver who could really take the fight to Palou this year.
Now, I might surprise you guys here, considering my background and everything, but I don't know if Joseph Newgarden actually is the guy who can go head-to-toe with Alex Palou. He finished 5th in the championship a year ago, and that's primarily because of how he performed on the road and street courses last year. And it seems Team Penske really put a lot of focus into the ovals last year to get him the Indy 500 win, and I really wonder this year if they're going to try and put more focus back on the road and street courses this year. I don't have definitive proof that that's what they did, but that's kind of seems to be what happened. That's speculation on my part. But if they can figure out the road and street courses again for Team Penske, specifically on the 2 car, yeah, like easily, Joseph Newgarden is the number 2 guy. But looking at last year, I don't think you can confidently say that. And that would mean, well, who is it? I'm going to save that for my bold predictions later in the show. But Joseph, yeah, the ovals, he's got them covered. There's 7 of them. He could win all 7, and it would not surprise me. It's going to be those road and street courses where it's going to come down to competing with Alex Palou or whoever else shows up this year.
We really can kind of call it a season of 2 halves here, guys, because there's such a density of road and street courses in the first half, and now we have this whole back half with now short tracks and one final super speedway to be the finale, which I'm super excited for. But I think when we look at how dominant that Newgarden was on these ovals, I think you've got to imagine, he could be fifth in the championship, even further back. And looking at how he's performing after Indy, I think he's still potentially in that fight. But that is kind of one of the big storylines we are watching. Let's talk about some of the other big storylines we might be watching. Two big ones from each of us, starting with Kobe. What you got for us?
Well, the first big storyline that I'm following this year is obviously the chaos that happened over the offseason related to the new hybrid powered engines that IndyCar was supposed to, be using this weekend in St. Pete, but they had a lot of trouble in testing. So IndyCar made what I believe is the right call, although not necessarily the best look in the world. I feel like a lot of them felt like if they would have rolled out them engines this weekend, you probably have less than 10 finishers, which would be highly embarrassing for IndyCar. So I think postpone it to after the Indianapolis 500 is the best way to go moving forward. It's better to make sure you do that after your biggest race of the year instead of running through all these teething pains. And hopefully they've solved all those issues, so we see it sometime after the Indianapolis 500. And if not, it might actually be best to wait, until the start of the 2025 season to make sure you hit the ground run at the start of a new year. So we don't really know much more about the engine thing right now. All we know is that IndyCar plans to roll out after the Indianapolis 500. And the second storyline that I'm going to be following is a story that recently came out from Marshallport and Racer.com talking about IndyCar wanting to prioritize, moving to these urban markets, in these big metropolis cities across America, try to, I guess, go back to the Champ Car days, and run on all these different street courses and all that. I know we see a lot of street courses in Formula E. Formula One's been shifting away from your legacy historic classical tracks and going to more street tracks as well. And just a few years ago, IndyCar was saying, they wanted to, try to add more ovals to the schedule. I'll give them to their credit. We got the Milwaukee Mile back, and then we got the Nashville Super Speedway. So I'll take that over nothing at all. I just think it's very interesting that at one point they seem like we wanted to have a better balance of ovals, and now it's like we want to add more street tracks. And in that Racer.com article, it said some places that they were looking at potentially racing is on the streets of Denver, Colorado, and Dallas, Texas. So I'll be interested to see what they decide there.
So two things I'm following this year. One is the upcoming TV negotiations that are currently ongoing, because right now we have NBC the full season with some races on USA and 2 on Peacock exclusively. That's going to be a huge deal, and that's going to come into effect next year. They're talking to Fox per reports. They're also talking to Apple TV per reports. Like, there's a lot of different things. I believe they're still talking to NBC as well. That's going to be huge for the future of the series, whichever route they go in. So I'd be following that for sure. And my other one here involves Andretti, because they have downsized. They've dropped the number 29 car this year. They've downsized, and I forgot who mentioned it, but someone mentioned Ganassi expanding to 5 cars and how that might hurt them. Yeah, it was Kobe who said that. And Andretti, they're going to downsize. That might benefit them. That might be what they've kind of needed for this past decade or so, to really feel more like a competent team put together. And they have Marcus Ericsson coming in over there. I think that's going to be greatly beneficial. So I am very intrigued by Andretti this year, seeing how they're going to perform over a full season, only having 3 cars. We saw Team Penske do this just a few years ago when Simon Pagenaud left and they dropped to 22, and they performed a lot better the next year. It's fun to follow.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, because you might think that having more cars would be beneficial because you can run different setups, potentially get more data back, and that maybe benefits everybody. But the counter to that, and I think the proof that you see sometimes in some of these situations, is that your resources get split and the team performance as a whole drops off as a result. So it's going to be very interesting following both Ganassi and Andretti and how each of those teams performs in 2024. Alex, to your point as well, the TV contracts I think are going to be a huge deal. I personally would like to see a second network come in. I would have no problem with NBC re-upping, but I think this is true just generally speaking when it comes to broadcasting. I think when you have 2 networks working alongside each other to cover the series, they each kind of keep each other in check and strive to improve their own products because they actually have somebody to measure themselves against. I think NBC's productions maybe gotten a little bit lazier since they got the exclusive rights compared to where they were when ESPN ABC was still doing the 500 and a handful of other races throughout the year. So that's going to be interesting to watch as well. And a story that I'm looking at is Will Power. Will Power in Team Penske. It was the first time since his Champ Car days in 2006, I believe, was the last season that he did not win a single open wheel race in his career over the course of a season. And to be doing that coming off the year where he won a championship and a year where Joseph Newgarden was so dominant on the ovals and Team Penske clearly had speed at those tracks, to go the entire year without winning a race was very shocking to see. So Power is obviously closer to the end of his career than the beginning, but you know that that competition fire in him still burns. I know that he wants to get back on the right track this year. So that's going to be interesting for me to watch this year as well.
Yeah, guys, I'm liking all of these, especially that last one there with Will Power. Ben, I think you could maybe ask the same question about Scott Dixon, if he can stay in this form and if it seems like this guy can be an IndyCar winner up until he's 75. But the big storylines that I'm looking for is this the year of the sports car guys? Being more specific here, Cullen Braun, who just signed a partial season contract with Dale Coyne, Tom Blomqvist, who is now a part of Meyer Shank Racing. These guys were teammates with Meyer Shank in their GTP program last year. And can we see these guys really make this mental switch from going to prototypes or sports cars in general to open wheelers? And is that proving that this is something we can see more kind of normalized, guys stepping over from IMSA or sports cars in general, kind of over to IndyCar and maybe not vice versa? The other big question I really want to ask here, and the big storyline I want to see, is can McLaren step up? And I think they've delivered in their few years where they've kind of taken over the helm from Sam Schmidt. But I think the real question we got to ask ourselves is, can they really, really be title contenders here? They were close with O'Ward, but are we going to be in a position now with all three cars where we're all fighting for wins consistently week in, week out? Talk to Alex Rossi. He thinks so. Malukas obviously is going to miss out the first race, but he's excited and he knows he needs to step up. And Pato's saying that the only way that this is going to be a good season for him is if he takes the 500 or wins the championships. So I really do think that's going to happen. From Adam Lemmerise, IndyCar used to be on the streets of Denver, Colorado. In the past, Al Unser Jr. won one of those races. Did not know that. I did know the Denver race. Instantly, San Jose comes to mind as another one of those Champ Car era races. I'm not sure where else they raced, but let's talk about another race that is going to be new to us this year. On March 24th, Thermal Club hosting the $1 Million Challenge, a non-points race. That's going to be in between the first and second event of the year. Facility did not do anything this year, but did test last year. And right now, here's the big thing. Tickets are currently $500. And for reference, St. Pete 3-day pass is about $175. So, gentlemen, could this be a big win for IndyCar to potentially attract new interest from people with connections to sponsorship deals, or do we think this is a one-time ordeal? Starting with you, Alex.
Personally, I don't know who this race is for, and I don't really understand why they're doing it. If it's to attract potential sponsorships, I guess I can see that angle. But IndyCar didn't need an all-star race. We needed an additional points race. An 18-race schedule would have been awesome. An exhibition race in an already short season just doesn't make any sense to me. And for it to be very exclusive, they've reduced the price, I'm assuming, because ordinary people haven't been purchasing them like they probably expected. And I'm not a fan of this. I'm not looking forward to this event. And I'll watch it. I'll see how it goes, but I'm not looking forward to it. I mean, I'll watch it, but I'm hoping it's just a one and done. And maybe I'll be proven wrong, though.
Ditto. I mean, literally ditto. I mean, that basically sums up my entire feelings of it perfectly. I do want to reserve total and complete judgment until we actually see it out on track. But I mean, to your point, Jackson, that you just made, $175 for a full weekend pass versus a steep price drop down to $500. How considerate of them. For the Thermal Club race. It seems like that this race is, I don't know, the saying, the rich get richer, come to mind for me here. to Alex's point, I don't really know who this is for other than a made-for-TV event, perhaps, or for a business sort of deal with potential sponsors coming in. But I don't really have too much more to add because Alex said it perfectly. I'm struggling to buy into the hype surrounding this new event that they're trying to build up here.
Yeah, I don't really have much more to add based on what you guys already said, but it is very interesting, now, just a few weeks before this all-star race is going to take place, now they suddenly decided to drop the ticket prices. And beforehand, when we were first talking about this all-star race, a handful of months ago on a Grit Tonight show on Wednesday nights, we're basically saying that, that this is basically an exclusive race, just for, the rich instead of, your everyday common IndyCar fans. Like for a lot of IndyCar fans, this race, was truly out of their budget. And now, yeah, it's a little bit better, but still at the same time, you have to wonder, is it truly worth, going out to the Thermal Club for this event that we've never seen before in the history of the NTT IndyCar series?
And guys, I'm just asking honestly. I don't know if anybody has any insight on this. I know that the prices were originally a lot more than $500. I mean, I'm just trying to think if I were a fan that had that kind of money to throw around and I had paid full price for these tickets, and then all of a sudden they get this steep drop just a few weeks before the race. Are those fans going to be compensated at all for the extra costs that they sacrificed to go pay early to see this? I mean, that just I don't know how you work around that. I mean, I understand that they want to sell more tickets, but I would not be very happy if I had paid full price and then everybody that waited to buy a ticket gets in for significantly cheaper. It wouldn't make me feel very good.
Alex?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but
I have an answer.
Oh, you do? What you got?
Oh yeah. Racer.com. Marshall Port comes in handy again. Marshall Port said that the Thermal Club has issued significant refunds to those who've purchased the limited number of $2,000 tickets for the IndyCar All-Star race. So those fans are going to end up, getting at least some of their money back. So it's not like they bought $2,000 and got ripped off there. So it's very courteous that IndyCar and the Thermal Club, were able to make this right. So I think they did the right thing by the fans there.
Hey, you know what? Honestly, in all seriousness, credit where it's due there, and that's a classy move. Because if I were if I were 15 grand or not 15 grand, but $1,500 in the hole after that, it would really turn me off to just even trying to take in the weekend and enjoy being there. So kudos to them for actually dropping the price, and then for the fans that did buy tickets, sounds like they're going to get a refund. That's good on them.
Yeah, what I was going to say was, like, if it was me that bought a ticket for that and I didn't get a refund, I would be very frustrated. It's just like, usually how it works is they'll start at a lower price and then they'll raise them the closer to the event is, not the reverse. But I'm glad that they're doing that. That's good.
What is it with new West Coast races, whether it's Vegas or this, being so dang expensive? Whether it's like, I don't know, just the minute that there's something within driving distance of me and it's $1 million, I think it's maybe this glorification of the West. But
I don't know that Vegas is a West Coast thing in so much as it's a Formula One thing, and all those races are ridiculously expensive.
You say that, but even for Formula One, you saw some of the ticket prices for those. It was outrageous.
And then they dropped the ticket prices as well.
They dropped those as well. Closer.
We failed, Jackson. We made it 24 minutes into the show before we ended up bringing up Formula One. I know you didn't want to do that tonight, but
so you can stop the timer. It's okay. It's okay.
But the thing is, with F1 and Thermal, they have one thing in common: is that they're both made for the rich. They're not really made for the common fan. That's the main problem with both of them.
I'll say it was. Yes, but I will argue that for different reasons, because there was still a vast diversity of openness for Vegas. This is essentially, for those who don't know, Thermal Club is essentially a country club, except you swap out the part with greens and fairways with straights and apexes. So you have a beautiful racing facility out here in Palm Desert, but the issue is you have a facility that's not meant for the standard race weekend. So I think that's also a partial issue. You can only have so many people. You can only have so many people at capacity here. but I still genuinely think this is going to be a great on-track product. Whether this is going to be something sustainable, we're going to have to find out. The one thing I would ask is if we can find a way to get floodlights in this thing and do a night road course race, which is something I don't think we've ever had in IndyCar, and I really, really want to see that change. So
That'd be cool.
Something different here for the roundtable. I'm going to name a team, and you guys are going to tell me which driver is going to win a race first, or if the team goes winless. We're going to start with AJ Foyt, starting with you, Ben.
So what have we got here? Santino Ferrucci and Stingray Robb, I guess. Stingray Robb, as much as I would love to see him get a win, I don't know that he's quite at that level yet, or that Foyt is going to quite be at that level yet, even though they do have the technical partnership with Penske going for them this year, so we'll see. But Santino Ferrucci, he's been knocking on the door for so long. I'm going to say he gets one this year. I don't know where it's going to be, but I think that he's come so close so many times. He's been fast enough so many times. I think this might finally be the year that he closes the deal and gets Foyt a victory.
Yeah, Ben, I tend to agree with that. And if Santino Ferrucci wins the race, I think it's going to be the Indianapolis 500. Because have you guys seen what Santino has done ever since his very first race at the Indy 500?
Oh, yeah.
He's taken to that track like a duck takes to water. It just seemed like that's his track, and when just one over these years that Santino and his team are going to get this right, and they're going to get that Indy 500. So if I had to pick between the two Foyt drivers, I think Ferrucci probably stands the best chance of winning the Indianapolis 500 because AJ Foyt racing, they really pour so much into their program for the month of May, and having the Penske Alliance this year, I'm sure that will certainly help them out a lot.
So earlier tonight, I just filmed a bonus episode for my podcast, the Gay Racing Podcast, over on YouTube. You can sit right here on the YouTube. You can subscribe, check it out in a few days. But I kind of talked about this exact same thing with Santino Ferrucci, that I don't think he'll win a race, but if he does, it will be the Indy 500. That's like the only place I could really see him actually pulling off a win. So to answer the question, they're going to go winless unless Santino wins the Indy 500.
Gonna remind you guys, I believe Joe does have the links to all of our externals in the description below if you guys want to check out what we do outside of here, covering the sport that we love. I want to remind you guys that AJ Foyt is entering a alliance of sorts with Penske, kind of intermingling crew and equipment, and I think that's going to benefit them in a long way. I think we still got to ask, of course, are they going to be in winning condition? And I'll go bold here and say that Ferrucci doesn't win Indy. He's going to win Nashville, drag race to the line against Joseph Newgarden.
And that would be fun because they had a little argument one time after a race at
Exactly.
Gateway before. So that'd be kind of cool.
We'll do that. We'll do that. I'll get out the hot takes early.
So
Let's shift over.
Will Joseph go yell at him after the race again if that happens?
I think it'll be a bro handshake moment. We're cool now.
Oh, okay.
If that happens, we'll see.
Yeah.
Andretti Global. That's Herta Eriksson and Kirkwood. Don't forget Marco Andretti, who's going to be running the 500. Kobe, what are we thinking?
I said, well, if I had to pick Andretti Global driver to win a race first, I think that this could be the year, that Colton Herta starts to get back on track. I remember at one point, Colton Herta, a lot of people were trying to, rush him off the Formula One, being like, Colton Herta is the top American prospect to go race in Formula One. And then, after that, then, he kind of, his performance dipped in the IndyCar series, and he hasn't really, completely looked like the same Colton Herta we saw before. And I think 2024 could be a year, that Colton Herta reminds us, that he's still that guy.
So for Andretti, I'm going to hold off a little bit on commentaries. This relates to my bold prediction later. But I am going to go with Kyle Kirkwood getting a win first for that team.
I think all three of their full-time entries are very much capable of winning. I still, I can just imagine Marco Andretti winning the Indy 500. What a story that would be. That would be
crazy.
Absolutely fantastic to watch. I don't know that he, is going to ever do that at this point in his career, coming back to just run that one race. But, I like what Andretti's done here, this strategy of locking these three guys down for the next 3 years here and, securing them for the foreseeable future. Marcus Ericsson, obviously Indy 500 winner, could have gone back-to-back last year, perhaps should have gone back-to-back last year, but let's not bring the red flag discussion back into this year. But Kyle Kirkwood, obviously, very talented young driver, already got a couple wins under his belt. And then Colton Herta, like you were mentioning, Kobe, somebody whose name has been floated out for potential Formula One conversations in the past, is looking to continue to live up to that hype. Clearly has immense raw speed. It's just been a matter of not being able to close the deal in so many of these races for the last couple of years now. But that entire lineup for Andretti, I'm gonna go out and be bold enough to say that they each win at least once. It's just gonna be a matter of who wins how many.
But if we had to pick one to win first,
if we had to pick one to win first, I would go with Kirkwood. But that's just a complete shot in the dark, because I think all three of these guys are, and I think Ericsson in particular is going to be very interesting to watch how he adapts to that new environment there.
I can add some light to the dark here, because I think we can probably have a mutual agreement here that these guys are really, really strong on street circuits, especially Long Beach and St. Pete. And both Herta and Kirkwood, have popped off. Kirkwood getting his first win last year, Herta dominating and really, really finding new places to pass at Long Beach. I genuinely think both of those guys could win in the first three races. I'm going to say let the best storyline win, and Jupiter, Florida native Kyle Kirkwood wins in St. Pete. So let's cut the narrative here, though, from one team cutting down to one bulking up. Chip Ganassi Racing, that's Scott Dixon, Alex Palou, and the two rookies, Armstrong, Lundqvist, and Simpson. Lundqvist not really. Lundqvist moving up to the full season, excuse me. Alex, how are we feeling about this team?
Well, to get their first win for the team this year, I feel like you got to go with Alex Palou, but never count out Scott Dixon. That man, you cannot count him out until that man's retired. So if I'm going to pick Alex Palou for the question, but Scott Dixon, man, that man could win 17 races in a row, and I wouldn't be too shocked because he's Scott Dixon. But I'm going to go with Palou for the question.
If I were AJ Foyt, I'd be counting. I don't know that his 67 is safe. I know that Scott Dixon's 43 years old. He's got 12 wins to go. It seems like a tall order, but this is a guy that, Elio won the 500 at 46 for crying out loud. I could see Scott Dixon still doing what he does now and pushing 50 years old here. I think he's still got at least 3 to 5 years left of being a solid championship contender, which he always is with where he ends up in the points. But to Alex's point here as well, I think it's either going to be him or Palou. But again, you've got some very strong young talent at Ganassi. It's going to be interesting to see if the expanded lineup is going to dwindle their resources for each car individually a little bit. Maybe that is going to be a little bit of weakness for them throughout this year. But with Alex Palou's dominance last year, I think he can maybe even afford to come down a couple notches and still be a threat to win a couple of races and maybe even defend his championship. So those would be the two to watch, obviously, the two most obvious names. But it's still a very strong lineup of a couple of rookies. And then we'll see what Marcus Armstrong can do as well.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Alex Palou winning first. I think that's the obvious choice. But like you were saying about Scott Dixon, man, the Iceman ages like fine wine. I could definitely see him, racing an IndyCar until he's age 50, or maybe he does the Mark Martin thing, continues on for several more years after that. It's amazing how Dixon hasn't fallen off, still competing at the top of his game. So I think it's a toss up between Dixon or Palou who could win first. But I also think, that I think Palou is probably going to be my lock. And then you look at Marcus Armstrong. It's been interesting to see how he gets along on the oval, since that's something that's going to be completely new to him. We saw some flashes of brilliance on the road and street courses last year. Had some growing pains there, which is not uncommon for a rookie. So we'll see how much you learn from that. And then the two rookies they have on the team, Linus Lundqvist, really looking forward to seeing what he can do. Finally get to run full-time in IndyCar, especially at a top-notch team. And Kiffin Simpson, I think he has a lot to prove this year, because considering the performances we've seen from him in the Indy Next Series, a lot of people really thought Kiffin Simpson wasn't truly ready for this seat. But then you look at what he's doing over in sports car racing, and you're like, wow, this guy is the real deal. And then if you look at the timing sheets from preseason tests at Sebring, he's right in the thick of it. I'm like, wow. Like, Kiffin Simpson's is fast. I never saw this one time during Indy Next, and it just could be one of those cases, where Kiffin Simpson's, skills as a driver just didn't translate well to the Indy Next car, and he might be better suited for the Indy car. Sometimes in racing series, you'll see where one driver in a lower level series, they're not really that great with the car, and then once they get in the big car, that's when they take off. So I think, Kiffin Simpson could be someone to watch this year, could prove, some of his doubters wrong.
Love that take, Kobe. I really like Marcus Armstrong this year. I think he's really, really locked in on the road courses, especially the street circuits. And I think with the right chances, especially, again, first 3 rounds here, we got to remember St. Pete, Thermal, Long Beach. I think he's got a really, really good shot at Thermal. If this is a total shot in the dark, he had a lot of test time there last year. So I really do like Armstrong here for getting this first win. Let's jump over to a team who we didn't know who was driving for them until about 10 o'clock for me this morning. This is Dale Coyne Racing. Jack is back. It's Jack Harvey alongside Nolan Siegel and Colin Braun. They're going to be sharing all 3 of those cars throughout the season. Let's start with Alex. Do we think they can pull off a win this year?
I don't think they get a win this year, but this is a very interesting lineup. They brought in Jack Harvey, who's, a veteran at this point. Nothing flashy. I mean, his career highlight for him is bumping Graham Rahal out of the 500 last year. I don't think he'll get a win, though. Nolan Siegel, rookie from Indy Next. Same thing as Kevin Simpson. I don't think he'll get a win. Colin Braun, though, I am very excited to see in an IndyCar. I don't think he'll get a win, but I honestly think he might be the best, in the races that he does, the best Dale Coyne driver this year. So even if he's newer to IndyCar, I think he's going to be a lot of fun to watch.
Ben?
Yeah, I don't know. I think that Coyne is a very interesting lineup. Obviously, having just been put together here this morning, to be quite honest, or at least being announced this morning. I would love to see them get a win with any of these drivers. I think that would be a great story for that team. But we do have to remember, again, this is not a Ganassi or a Penske, in terms of resources or budget or anything. They do the best with what they've got, but they haven't won a race since I think Sebastian Bourdais was driving for them. So it's going to be a tall order. I would probably lean towards saying, if I had to make a prediction, that they might be able to squeak a podium out once or twice, but I don't think they're going to get a win.
Yeah, Ben, I tend to agree. I don't think Dale Coyne Racing is going to be winning any races in 2024, but it's nice to see, Jack Harvey has another shot to redeem his IndyCar career after things went south for Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing. And then Nolan Siegel, the Indy Next regular, really excited to see what he can do in the IndyCar, been able to run a dual program this year between those 2 series. And Colin Braun, I think he could really surprise a lot of people this year with his performances in IndyCar. I know he doesn't have the open wheel racing experience, but after, been able to run, I believe it was 98 laps at Sebring during the test, he was very impressive. Yes, he was towards the back of the field, but you have to think, this was his first day in an IndyCar, and typically when you get your first day in IndyCar, then a second day and a third, you're going to pick up the pace. So I think there's a lot of room for Colin Braun to grow, and who knows where this could lead. I know right now he's only supposed to run, just at least the first 2 races at St. Pete and then the Thermal Club, but he has sports car commitments, obviously, but there's a lot of gaps in the schedule, so maybe Colin Braun will get some more IndyCar races later on in the year.
The 30-something-year-old Colin Braun, within a day of testing, has gotten within a second of the pace of Jack Harvey. Yeah. And some people might say that's a low bar in the IndyCar world, but I really do got to credit Colin for how quickly he's adapted to this car. I think overall for Coyne, they're going to have a shot for a lot of top 5s and podiums, potentially podiums. I think they need to keep it tidy and keep things really, really clean in execution, whether that's driver or strategy. And I don't know, this team has just the ability to seemingly randomly pop off at times. James Davidson almost winning the Indy 500 instantly comes to my mind in 2017. But I would see Siegel as a top performer, and I could definitely see a couple of top 10s, maybe a few top 5s from this team. Over to Arrow McLaren, it's Ilant filling in for the injured Malukas, then your full-time drivers Rossi and O'Ward, and then stepping in for the Indy 500, trying to go for the double. It is Kyle Larson, starting with you, Ben. How are we feeling about this team? Do we think Larson has a chance of winning the 500? Well, let's start with this. Do we think he's in the clear for actually making the race?
I would hope so. But McLaren's been here before. To go back 5 years to Fernando Alonso. I mean, there are no guarantees. Just like we were talking about on the Encore show with Brandon Crossland and Josh Birch last night. It doesn't matter if you're Scott Dixon. You got to come back every year and prove that you belong. And we've seen James Hinchcliffe bump before. We've seen, the Andretti team in 2011 fail to get two of their cars in. Ryan Hunter-Reay ended up having to buy a spot. We've seen Fernando Alonso with McLaren, for example, fail to make this race. And then, of course, we saw a full-timer in Graham Rahal get bumped just last year and only come back into a race after the unfortunate injury to Steph Wilson. So, I think Kyle Larson's going to be safe. I certainly know that talent-wise, he's among the fastest 33. But, you just never know what's going to happen in Indianapolis. So we're going to have to wait and see before we start talking about can he win the race. First, he has to get in the race, and I think he will. But I can't sit here and guarantee it here on the 5th of March, 2024. We got to wait until we actually get out on track. But will McLaren win a race this year? I think they've got a lineup that can do that. Pato O'Ward, obviously, again, somebody that's, you want to talk about a name that's maybe been floated out for some Formula One conversations, especially given that he drives for the McLaren team, but obviously has an F1 outfit as well. And then Alexander Rossi, again, I know he's desperate to regain that championship form that he had for a couple of years when he was just coming into this series with Andretti. We haven't seen that Alexander Rossi for the last several seasons now. Let's see if he can get back on track. I think he probably wins a race this year, and that would have McLaren covered right there.
Just want to remind you really quick, Ben, that was a very different McLaren than we saw
That
today.
is true. That is
because,
true.
Again, that was ran with an external crew from Carlin. That being said, at the same time, the team that would become actual McLaren was still struggling to get Hinchcliffe in for the second time. So what does that say? It still says that really Indy doesn't owe anybody anything. And again, this is Indy. Anything can truly happen. Kobe, what do we got here?
And I think James Hinchcliffe said it perfectly himself. I remember that quote to this day: "Indy is a cruel mistress." Yeah, but getting on with my answer, if I had to pick one driver to win from the Aaron McLaren group, I think obviously Pato O'Ward. I think Pato, feels like that. This is his year that he feels like he needs to go out there. He needs to win races and get the championship. I think he could be one of those championship contenders once again up there with Joseph Newgarden and Alex Palou. I think right now Pato O'Ward is definitely the top driver at Aaron McLaren. So I feel like they're going to be pouring the most resources into him, gives them the best chance to go out there and win. I think this weekend at St. Pete going to be an interesting opportunity for Callum Ilott. I have a feeling if Juncos Hollinger Racing had let Ilott go out of his contract a lot sooner, we might be talking about Callum Ilott full-time in this number 6 and not David Malukas. The timing is really unfortunate for Callum, so he's going to be looking, try to fill in whenever he can throughout the 2024 season. I think that this could be a great opportunity for him to go out there this weekend and show what he can do in an Aaron McLaren car. And maybe next year, if there's an opening, he could return to the IndyCar grid full-time. And I remember when Aaron McLaren formed this alliance with Juncos Hollinger Racing, McLaren seemed very interested in Callum Ilott, and if he was still in the Junco, right, that would be, a way for them, to keep tabs on him and see how he's doing. Now he's going to get an opportunity to drive this Aaron McLaren car, and we'll see where it goes from here. David Malukas is interesting to see what he's going to do once he gets in this car later on in the season. And if he wins the race, I think it's going to be a gateway because he's been crazy good at that track. I think that would probably be my best bet for him getting a win. I think once he gets going after recovering from an injury, I think Malukas is going to be fine in that car. Alexander Rossi, I think he certainly has a lot to prove this season. I think he needs to have really great results because looking at the current drivers on the team, I feel like he's the one, that would probably be the most expendable, the one that they would drop first if Rossi has a down year. It's been really interesting to see how Alexander Rossi at one point, he was one of the top guys competing for the championship, and now it seems like he's not one of the top contenders for the championship anymore. But on a good day, Rossi can still deliver a really great result. And in regards to Kyle Larson, I think Aaron McLaren has a really good testing program for him. I really like what I'm seeing so far, and given Larson's raw talent and his ability behind the wheel of a race car, it would not surprise me if we see him perform, similar to what we saw from Kurt Busch quite a handful of years ago. It would not surprise me to see Kyle Larson get a top 10 finish in this race, or even a top 5. Can Kyle Larson win the Indianapolis 500? Who knows? But that would be a really stunning story. That would probably be one of the stories of the year if Kyle Larson could go out and win the Indianapolis 500.
Now, I want to jump off the Callum Ilott topic there because don't count out Callum Ilott on possibly stealing the win this weekend. Like, I wouldn't say it's 100% or like 70. It's probably more like 5-10% chance it could happen. It's not zero though. Like, Callum Ilott could genuinely shock the world and win this weekend. I think he is so talented. Last year on my podcast, my bold prediction was Callum Ilott would win a race. Of course, that did not happen, but I really do think really highly of him. And if he does win, that is not a good look for David Malukas because it's kind of like, with David Malukas, you're kind of just not showing up to your first day at your new job. It's kind of what David Malukas is doing. I know he got injured. On your first day, though, it's not a great look, right?
That's true.
Like, he showed up to orientation, he did all the test sessions, but then he's not showing up to his first day. And that's not great. So if Callum Ilott has a strong showing here, that's not good news for David Malukas, in my opinion. Wait and see what happens there. But obvious answer to the question, who is going to get the win first for the year? I'd say Pato Award is easy answer. Not much else to add on that, but I would say Rossi needs to perform. I think this is on. I don't know when Rossi's contract goes till, but he really, really needs to pick it up to get on pace with awards. I think McLaren hired him thinking that he would do that, and he hasn't really done that yet. And man, Kyle Larson, that Indy 500. First of all, I think he will make the show, but I think Larson could actually contend to win the Indy 500. I have continuously said that. I think if anyone can do it who is not a full-time IndyCar driver, it's Kyle Larson. That's going to be so much fun to watch, whether he does well or not. That is so exciting. It's huge, not just for IndyCar, but motorsports as a whole, that Kyle Larson's doing the Indy 500 this year.
I think if you ask any racing fan who you'd want to see in IndyCar or doing the 500, obviously the Taylor brothers come to mind for me, but well, David is a better oval driver than road or street course driver. I kind of agree with that, but you still have to realize Ilott was running in the top 10 at Texas pretty comfortably. But I mean, Kyle Larson, though, a guy that's kind of on any racing fan's list of guys we want to see at the Indy 500, and I think one of the most anticipated entries this year. I'm super excited to see that happen, and I really, really hope, if anything, we can see someone finish this 1,100-mile journey, because I don't think anyone has since Stewart did it. Going back to the rest of the crew, though, I really do think Callum Ilott can pop off this. Sorry. I really do think, though, Callum Ilott can pop off and show something special there, because even though he's in the World Endurance Championship full-time, it feels like something's missing there. But
yeah, I totally agree, Jackson, and I want to just say about this comment, I think the only shot David Malukas has at winning a race this year is at Gateway. That is the only track he has really shown much of anything at in the 18 car. I know he's going to be at a stronger team with McLaren now, but like, where has he shown much of anything besides Gateway? I don't really... I can't think of anything.
He was fourth at Texas, but you know.
Yeah. Like, I think if he wins a race this year, if he does win a race this year, it'll be at Gateway. But other than that, I don't think Malukas is going to be too much of a contender, like race winner contender. That's why if I'm him, I'm really worried about how well Ilott does this weekend.
You do kind of have two opposite sides of the same coin there almost, because you've got Ilott with really, really good road course experience, still kind of growing into the oval stuff, and Malukas almost the opposite, has shown really good results on ovals, still not quite there for road and street. So however this goes, I think it's going to be really interesting, and I think just in general, we really want to see Callum back in IndyCar one way or another.
Yeah. And I do want to clarify. I think Dave Malukas is a great race car driver. I think I think he could eventually compete for a championship and wins and everything. It's just this injury really does set him back. It really does in terms of his career, because it's just horrible timing. And I know he's free to do whatever he would like to do. It's similar to like Alex Bowman and Chase Elliott over in NASCAR and their injuries last year, but it's not great position for him.
Let's shift over from one of the biggest names to the mom and pop shop, the true mom and pop shop of IndyCar, Ed Carpenter Racing. Kobe, how do we feel about this team?
Oh, Ed Carpenter Racing, interesting group this year. I'm actually gonna say that Ed Carpenter Racing is not gonna win a race in 2024. I think Renus VK is gonna go into this year, try to do the best he can. I think he's going to hit free agency in 2025 and try to sign with a different team, because Ed Carpenter Racing, it really seems like they're still going through the phase of rebuilding, try to get that program back up to where it used to be. And I guess one of my bold predictions now, that it may not be enough for them, to try to keep Renus VK in this car beyond this year. Ed Carpenter, he's gonna be interesting to see how he does on the oval tracks. I know Indianapolis 500 is where his heart's at, but the other oval race, last few years or so, we haven't really seen, much from Ed Carpenter in those races. Typically running towards the back and all of that. And then Christian Rasmussen, really excited to see what he can do in IndyCar as well. I think it's going to be quite a year of learning for him, and he's going to be in that number 20 ride. But for Rasmussen, if Renus VK ends up leaving after this year, I think that 21 could potentially be his full time in 2025.
Yeah, with Ed Carpenter Racing, I don't see them getting a win. If they do, it'll be with Renus VK. But as you said, Kobe, the performance just hasn't been there for VK or Ed Carpenter Racing as a whole, which is pretty disappointing, honestly, because this used to be a team that was really on the up and up, really performing. And you can go back to when Joseph Newgarden drove there as well. I mean, this team was a championship contender almost. Like, Joseph had the 21 like up in the top 5, top 3 in points. And as Adam says, I 100% agree, they will not win a race this year.
Since Joseph Newgarden won at Iowa in 2016, they have one win with Renus VK at the Indy Road Course in 2021. So history would suggest that if anybody's going to do it, it's probably going to be VK. I know Ed Carpenter can still show some speed on the ovals here and there, particularly on qualifying day. Carpenter's been known to be a contender for the front row and pole and everything. But in terms of the race pace, I don't know that it's been there in recent years. And I would tend to agree with pretty much everybody else. I think, don't entirely count VK out, but if I had to make a prediction, they probably go winless once again.
Even if they are winless, one of those cars is 100% going to be on the front row for the 500. That's all I'm going to say, because they're mediocre everywhere else, but God, are those guys fast at Indy. Let's talk about Juncos Hollinger Racing now with Canapino and Grosjean entering into a similar kind of partnership with McLaren. Alex, how do we feel about Grosjean coming to this team, and do we think Canapino can improve in his sophomore year?
This is a really interesting team, because Agustin Canapino really impressed me last year in his rookie campaign, because IndyCar is so different from what he had done for a career. So I don't think Canapino gets a win, but I think he's going to show more improvement this year. In Romain Grosjean, there was a point that I didn't think he was even going to be back this year. I thought he was going to be like an IMSA or World Endurance Championship, something. But here he is, and I said it on a show last year. I said it several times on my podcast as well, that Romain Grosjean does better on smaller teams. We saw it when he was in the 51. He nearly won a couple of races in the 51. I think Grosjean gets a win this year. I actually do, in the 77, because this is a small team. The pressure is back off. He's not going to be expected to win. That is the big thing. At Andretti, he was expected to win. All the pressure was there, and it really got to him. He's going to be back in the same kind of boat as he was when he was in the 51. Not really expected. So he's going to just kind of go all out there, going to just kind of be more chill. He's going to be happier, I think. And we might see the Grosjean of his rookie campaign. And he might actually pull a win off this time.
Again, I feel like every year we get one sort of surprise. I don't know if you can completely call Christian Lundgaard a shock winner last year, but, not somebody like an Alex Palou or a Scott Dixon or even a Scott McLaughlin or Joseph Newgarden and Penske, but you would expect to be a weekly contender for the podium. But he got a win last year, Toronto, and good on him. I think I'm right with you, Alex. I think that we could be saying the same thing about Grosjean. I think that sometimes, just the team and driver pairing for whatever reason, don't seem to work. And a change of pace, a change of environment is exactly what both parties need. I think you could see that at Andretti this year, and I think you could see that for Grosjean this year. But I think being at a team where that pressure isn't going to be on him as much might allow him to flourish and maybe even be standing on the top step of the podium at one of these races in 24.
I'm actually going to say different compared to you guys. I'm going to say Junko's Hollinger Racing doesn't win a race in 2024, but I will agree with the fact I think Roman Grosjean will do much better in this smaller team environment where the pressure is off. Because, when he was driving for Delcoin Racing, people don't expect Delcoin Racing to go out there and be competitive every week and go out there and win races. So when Grosjean had those great runs in the Delcoin Racing Honda, people were like, wow, that was very impressive. Versus being an Andretti car, you're basically expected, be in the top 5, top 10 every single week, being competitive. So, and I felt like that really, got Roman Grosjean and really, led to a lot of tensions we saw with the Andretti team last year. But I'm also a little concerned, about potential tension at Junko's Hollinger Racing as well. For Roman, I know Roman Grosjean, he's gotten into quite a few drivers during his short-lived IndyCar career so far. For his sake, I hope he doesn't get into Agustin Canapino, because I think that could that could not end well. We saw what happened with Callum Ilott, and if Grosjean and Canapino hit, I think that could potentially lead to some problems with the team owner Ricardo Juncos, who's obviously standing by his countryman Agustin Canapino. So I think that could be one of the downsides of Grosjean working out at Junko's Hollinger Racing. Rule number 1 is in races, don't hit your teammate, but especially in Roman Grosjean's case, do not hit Agustin Canapino, because we know Grosjean, he goes elbows out and he's not afraid to bang wheels.
And I'll tell you what, Kobe, I feel like if anyone in this grid can take the backlash and take it in strides, it is Grosjean, because he's been a part of this. This is going to sound not great on Grosjean's end, but he's been on the receiving ends of these negative comments so many times. St. Pete with McLaughlin instantly comes to mind. But I think I just think this would be such an incredible storyline, and I could really, really see it happening. The first win for Juncos comes with the first win for Grosjean. I think another really, really cool storyline we could potentially see: the 5th win for Helio Castroneves at the Indy 500. Meyershank Racing, Helio doing the 500 as the new boss alongside the Vists, Felix Rosenquist and Tom Blomqvist. Ben, what do we see out of this team this year? I don't like that.
I agree. I agree.
Can we just have long sigh as every reaction?
You could just leave it at that, Ben. We can move on to
guys?
We can move on to Kobe.
I think hold on, guys, hold on. Everybody's talking about Kyle Larson. Everybody thinks that would be the biggest story in motorsports all year, is that Kyle Larson can come out and he can actually contend for the win, doing the double with the 500 and the 600. I'm going to put my chips on the table right now. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to regret it probably when we come time for the end of May. If Elio's going to get his 5th, it's going to happen this year.
What a twist.
Racing, they get a win. It's with Elio. He gets his 5th. And everybody goes crazy, and then he goes back on the map. That's my prediction.
I love it.
So you started with a sigh. I was like, oh yeah, you thought they're going to be
over.
like bottom 3.
Yeah.
Wow, okay.
Kobe?
Well, I'm actually going to say Meyershank Racing is going to go winless in 2024. I mean, I would love to see Elio get number 5. I would really love to see him do that, but I just don't see that happening. Maybe this will age poorly for me, and it'll age correctly for Ben. And now look at their full-time drivers, Felix Rosenquist. I think this will be a good environment for him, kind of like Roman Grosjean, low pressure environment where he's not expected to go out there and win week in and week out. I think Felix can thrive in this position. Tom Blomqvist, I think the IndyCar races we saw last year from him, not totally representative of what he can be as an IndyCar driver. As he mentioned, the amount of training that you have to do, in the different type of training you have to do to drive these physically demanding Indy cars is way different than the sports cars. And Blomqvist has been working hard over the offseason, doing the training that Indy car drivers do. And he feels like he's more physically fit and prepared to race in IndyCar full time this season. I'm not sure what type of IndyCar driver Tom Blomqvist will be, but based on what we saw from him in sports cars, really excited to see what he can do this year.
So I don't think this team gets a win by any means, but Tom Blomqvist coming into IndyCar is so exciting. I am so pumped to see how he does and evolves into a full-time IndyCar ride. And Felix Rosenqvist being in like the veteran kind of position for the full-time season, that's really interesting to me because he's never really been, super week in, week out competitive. He's always been kind of just quietly consistent. So I think him kind of being a mentor for Tom Blomqvist is going to be really fascinating to watch as the season goes on. If Elio Castroneves wins the Indy 500, that will be crazy. I'm going to be there. So I'd be pumped if Elio Castroneves won. Oh my gosh. I don't see that. I am glad that he's going back to just a 500 though. That should have happened a while ago. So, and hey, wasn't the last time he did that the time he won the 500? So, I mean, maybe.
I could see it. Hey, are we kind of forgetting that Rosenqvist is on this team? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm saying that I think that's truly the ace up the sleeve in this team.
Sure.
He has winning experience. He's got great knowledge from McLaren. I think if anyone can and will win realistically, it's Fro.
Yeah.
From Adam, sorry, Ben, Helio doesn't win his 5th Indy 500. With what crystal ball are you giving us this information, Adam?
And let me just ask it to anybody that thinks he can't do it. Did anybody expect it in 21?
No.
Will Power was running down
that was a big surprise.
Will Power told Elio Castroneves, I had to look up to the pylon. I was like, who's number 06? Nobody saw that coming. But Elio can't. And who did he go toe-to-toe with to get the job done? Alex Palou, the guy that dominated last year, that had the worst finish of 8th place, that is knocking on the door of winning an Indianapolis 500 of his own. It's the last thing that he has to achieve in this sport. And he's only going into, his 5th full-time year, I think. If Elio did it in 21, who's to say he can't do it this year? Who's to say Shank's not going to come back with speed and get the job done? And there you go. You're saying Rosenqvist is going to win? It's too good. Everybody's going to be focused on Kyle Larson. That's going to be the main storyline. That's going to be the top one-off that we think might get the win. And Elio's just going to sneak up there and quietly march to the front and get the job done. That's my prediction.
I love it. I love it so much. Do we have anything else here before we get moving?
No.
Alrighty. Let's talk then about the other guys. Let's talk about Dylan real quick. Helio's winning in 21 for the first time.
Cool
I watched the 500 and I've watched every since. Also super excited to see Larson run, as are we, Dylan. Let's talk, though, about another potential big storyline here in RLL. Graham Rahal, Pietro Fittipaldi coming back, ran one race in Phoenix and a couple others before joining full-time this year. Lundgaard and Sato for the 500. Kobe, how are we feeling about this team?
I think Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing is going to win a race, but if it happens, I think Christian Lundgaard is going to be the one to win first. Towards the end of last year, we really saw this team start to figure things out with their engineering department, all their personnel, and they really ended 2023 on a strong note, and maybe they can carry this momentum into the 2024 season. But one of the strengths of Christian Lundgaard, obviously a really good road course and street racer, but one of his biggest weaknesses is on the oval. I think Christian Lundgaard, if he's ever going to be in a championship contender in the IndyCar series at some point in his career, he's certainly going to have to improve his oval racing skills there. And, Rahal, Letterman, Lanigan Racing in general, their oval program, hasn't always, been on par. Sometimes it might be good, but, other times not so good, especially looking at what happened last year's Indianapolis 500. I think Graham Rahal could potentially sneak off a win somewhere this year as well. Pietro Fittipaldi. I don't think he's going to win, but I think he's going to show that he belongs in the NTT INDYCAR series. And Takuma Sato, great to see him coming home to RLL to try to get him another Indianapolis 500 victory.
I mean, you just imagine Christian Fittipaldi, though, coming out of retirement. You want to
Oh my
gosh. An unreal story.
The single hand keeping Helio from winning the 500.
So my question is regarding RLL. Which RLL is going to show up? The one that was atrocious, going as slow as a turtle at the start of the season, gets bumped out of the Indy 500 by their other car. All four of their cars were awful at Indy. Or are we going to get the second half of the season RLL where Christian Lundgaard won a race, Graham Rahal nearly won a race at Indianapolis Road Course. Which version are we going to get? If it's the first half of the season of last year's season, hell no, they're not going to win. But if you get the second half of the season, yeah, Christian Lundgaard might win 2 races, I would say, and Graham Rahal could possibly sneak one out. I mean, Takuma Masato at the Indy 500, I mean, never count him out at Indy, I don't think. And I don't know much about Fittipaldi. I don't think that'll happen, but man, RLL, it's just going to be like they need to figure out the problems they had last year. And it seemed like they did, but they got to keep that momentum going into this year.
Yeah, well, I like Fittipaldi, and you got to remember, it wasn't that long ago that, there was an open Haas seat, and everybody thought that he was right in line for it in Formula One. Of course, they ended up bringing back Kevin Magnussen instead, and I think it worked out relatively well for them that year, having that veteran leadership. But he's again another name that has been floated out there for that series from time to time. So that speaks to the talent that Haas think that he has, and obviously Rahal taking a chance on signing him for the full year of this season. I think that he could make some noise. I don't know, but he could win a race because, as Alex said, it's going to depend on which version of RLL shows up. Graham Rahal, I know, is desperate to put last year's 500 behind him and come out and bounce back from that. So again, this is probably the toughest one for me because I could see it going either way. Again, it's very much depending on what we see the first couple races throughout the year, and then of course Sato, of course, at the 500. You can like you said, Alex. He's always going to be a threat there. So I think this is the one where it's probably the most. You just got to flip a coin and go with whatever side comes up here. I'm going to lean no, just because I don't know that they're quite back to where they could be yet. But if they come out, showing the same amount of progress that they made over last year, they could definitely get the job done.
I'm giving you guys 5 seconds to think of this, and I'm putting you on the spot, Ben, because we're starting with you. Where do we see Graham Rahal finishing? Ready, go.
Finishing in the points or
in the points.
I give him around 13th.
Gotcha. Alex?
15th.
Okay. Kobe?
11th.
Lack of optimism here. Okay. I mean, the guy's getting older, but he still knows how to drive, especially on the ovals. I could really see him winning at Milwaukee, one of the Milwaukee races.
Ooh, okay.
Hey, he was 15th last year for the record, so that
look at me go.
That would
be okay. You guys say that, but Rahal literally said in his last interview at Laguna Seca, "I've seen the AMR guys more than my wife this year." Like, that guy had so many crashes last year and was just on the receiving end of so much bull junk. Like, I do think the only way is up for him this year. That's with 40 points, actually more than 40 points, right? Because he sat on the pole and led the most laps at the IMS road course last fall. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Finished second in that race. Yeah. So, I mean, how low would he have been if you take that runner-up finish out of the equation? It's certainly a very down. I think he's going to bounce back a little bit. I don't know. Top 10 might be a bit of a stretch given where we expect the Rahal team to be and how strong the competition is going to be this year. But, I could see him eking out a podium, maybe even a win here or there, and bouncing back a little bit from. I mean, it'd be hard to be worse than last year. The bar is very low, so he's got that going for him. Anything, even the slightest amount of improvement, I think he's going to feel good after the year he had.
Like it. Let's end with the evil empire of IndyCar, Team Penske. And let's start with someone who's not biased towards them in any way, shape, or form. Alex, how do you think this team is going to perform this year?
Well, let the background speak for itself. But you could go any way with these guys on getting the first win for the team. But I mean, for first win for the team this year, I think it's going to be Scott McLaughlin. I think Scott's going to just really be super strong all year. I think Scott McLaughlin just gets better every year. If he can figure out the consistency, I think he's going to be right up there with Alex Palou. I genuinely think Scott McLaughlin is a favorite for this championship this year. Joseph, I mentioned earlier, he just needs to figure out the road and street courses again, because you can be good on the ovals, but over half the schedule is on a road and street course track. He's got to figure those out. And Will Power, I don't really know, because he did win the championship just 2 years ago, right? But I would agree with that, Jono82. I really think he's a threat for that. But Will Power, I just don't know. Like his championship feels kind of forgettable, right? Because it was just kind of like a very quiet year for
Because
Will
no
Power.
one was expecting it.
Right.
It
but
proves
it's also
where consistency can get you.
Yeah, exactly. It's just like, is Will Power going to have a flashy season? No, but that doesn't mean he's not going to win the championship because we just saw him do that just 2 years ago. So it's very interesting. Team Penske is very interesting, and they just really need to do better on the road and street courses. But best of these guys, I think overall it's going to be McLaughlin, but in points it might be Newgarden.
I don't know what I would say McLaughlin is a favorite for the championship, but I think he's a dark horse for the championship. I think he's somebody that you could see being a breakout star, taking that next step. I mean, I think he already is a star with how quickly he's adapted to this series. Yep. But you could see him, like Adam says in the chat, being the first race winner. I mean, let's answer the question first and foremost. I think we can all agree Penske's going to win at some point this year with, one of these three drivers at the very least, if not all three of them. Power's been a lock to win up until last year for the last decade and a half. Newgarden obviously owned the ovals last year. McLaughlin, like I just mentioned, has adapted very well to this series. And, if anybody could take the fight to Palou and Newgarden being the top two championship contenders, if you had to say who's maybe the third after that, Scott McLaughlin, I think, is a great candidate for that position because I think that he has picked up this series very, very well. He's shown a lot of speed at times. If he can keep that consistency going over the course of a full year, he's going to be dangerous, and he could be that breakout championship contender that Alex was just talking about.
Love it. Kobe?
Yeah, looking at Team Penske, I think all three of their drivers are going to win in 2024. And for championship-wise, I think Newgarden is obviously going to be up there already set that. And McLaughlin, I agree. I think he could be a dark horse in this championship. And Will Power, I think he's finally going to get back to victory lane as well. I think we're going to see Team Penske in victory lane quite a bit throughout the season like we've seen in years past. I don't really have much more to add to that.
If somehow, some way, McLaughlin wins at St. Pete, I don't say that like it's impossible. I think the real question, and this one's kind of directed at Alex, do we think there's going to be some reference of, yeah, I'm happy I'm here, I'm happy I won, I'm just happy I didn't fracture my wrist riding my bike?
Yep.
Do we think there's going to be think there's going to be more smoke towards Malukas this year? Because that was a little bit of a beef that was declared publicly by Malukas last year, mind you.
Yeah, I don't know if they'll do it publicly or anything, but like internally, I'm sure there's gonna be plenty of that. I think it just depends on how much they want to really poke fun at Malukas in public. Because last time they did that, there was a bit of a blowback on Twitter when people didn't get the sarcasm. So I mean, it'd be funny. I'd laugh personally.
Yeah.
But I don't know if the overall majority would fully understand their sense of humor. So.
Ben Cubby, we got anything on that, or?
I don't really have.
That's so no, you're so good. We had a banger of a comment earlier that I want to bring in. Thank you so much from A Day in the Life. Will a full-time driver fail to qualify for the Indy 500? Augustine Canapino.
Oh.
Okay. All right.
Really?
I think when you've got top flight guys coming in for just for this race, like Sato, like Larson, I really, really do think maybe some of the full-time guys who especially don't have oval pace could be struggling.
Well, who's been bumped for the last couple of years? We had Ray Hall last year. I think. Did we have bumping in 22? I can't remember.
Anderson's been unfortunately irregular.
Right. I know there was bumping in 21. I think that was Anderson and Charlie Kimball got bumped. That's right. He wasn't a full timer though. Yeah, I mean, again, I don't wish it on anybody. It's unfortunate. That's just how mathematics works, right? 36 guys show up, 34 guys show up. Like we saw last year. One of them gets sent home. The field is 33, and that's it. We don't need to go back to 1997 or whatever when they let 35 drivers start the field. Like the field of 33, that is one of the most sacred traditions we have left at IMS. If a full timer gets bumped, and Jackson, But hopefully you appreciate it. We made an hour 15 before the subject came up.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
I think if a full-timer gets bumped, I'm calling it right now. Charters in 2025, guaranteed entries are back. I mean, that's just, it would be great for the storylines, for the buzz around bump day, for the drama of bump day. Of course, it would be a massive storyline if a full-timer gets bumped. But if that happens, dare I say, especially if it's somehow one of the Penske cars, there is absolutely no way you see this charter talk get delayed anymore. They're bringing, whether it's going to be the 25 and 8 rule back or full-timers or however it's going to work out. I just think that that's going to be the last nail in the coffin. And unfortunately, I hope I'm wrong. I hope it doesn't happen, but it sounds like those conversations are starting back up again. More people seem to be in favor of it than ever before.
I almost want to flip that argument on its head. If it's going to happen, I think it's if it's a full-time driver outside of Penske, because Roger's going to be able to, bite that bullet, and maybe there's less of a, infighting towards that. But that's just my theory. I don't know how Alex or Kobe feels about this, but.
Well, Will Power almost was bumped a few years ago.
Right,
he
yeah.
did have to go to bump
21.
day. So maybe Penske's still nervous after that happened. I don't know. And that was the last that Penske ran the fourth car, and they helped Paretta Autosport out that year. So Penske, they went from 5 technically all the way down to 3 after that happened.
And Simona was right there as well. Simona De Silvestro was the last one to get in. So she was right.
Penske, if you want to include that, had 2 in bump day that year. So I mean, anything can happen. I hope they never do that. If they want to do a charter system, let it stay as it is now. But I feel like that's a lot to ask. Because then what else is the point of a charter in IndyCar? Honestly, unfortunately. But yeah, if someone's going to get bumped, I feel like you have to say it's a Rahal car, just based on what happened last year and their overall oval speed that we've seen. But like, a lot can change in a year. Like, it could be someone entirely different.
Yeah, and I've always felt this way. I feel like that the Indianapolis 500, should always be the fastest 33, and there should never, ever be guaranteed entries, because the Indianapolis 500 qualifying for the greatest spectacle in racing, it's special because, like I said, it's the fastest 33. It's not like, you're 35th fastest, but you have a provisional. So although I'm slower than the person who was actually 33rd fastest, so that guy is not going to get in, and I'm just going to automatically bump into the field like you see on other racing series. So I think that this is the one thing that makes this race truly special, and I would really hate to see that go away at some point. And it will not surprise me if we saw a big name get bumped this year. I'm not even going to predict who I think could potentially get bumped this year, but like Alex was saying, based on what we saw last year, maybe you could just pick a Rahal car who could be in trouble again. Maybe they improve their program. It's just really hard to say who could potentially get bumped, but it would not surprise me to see bump day drama again.
I want to pull us out of this charter system talk, because I feel like with how much I think we're all on the same page here, as is pretty much the entirety of the IndyCar and racing fan base. And unfortunately, no matter how much we talk about it, it's still ultimately up to them. So we can only hope that the storylines and the decisions that are made in the next couple of months will keep this tradition that we love alive, and will keep the thing that makes Indy.
And just one more point, Jackson, before we move on here. I just wanted to confirm real quick. It's March 5th, and we already stand at 35 confirmed entries for the
Love
race.
it.
That guarantees that we're going to see a fight to get into the field. So we'll see what happens.
Beautiful. Let's talk about some other guys that might be struggling to get in, and by that I mean rookies. That's Kiffin. How do I pronounce? I always struggle with Simpson's first name. Kiffin. 10th in Indy last year. Really solid in LMP2. Was a winner in the Asian Le Mans Series. Was the champion in ELMS. Linus Lundqvist, year 22 Indy Next Championship winner. Christian Rasmussen, year 23 Next Championship winner, and just grabbed a fresh Rolex with Aero Motorsports. Tom Blomqvist had a couple races last year. He's an IMSA winner, 22 champ in prototypes. And for the 5th one, Kyle Larson. What do I need to say about Larson? 300 Cup starts, 24 wins, 2021 champion. Guys, which rookie do we believe is going to have a standout year here? We already talked a little bit about Kyle Larson, but do we think he's in your guaranteed pick to qualify for Indy? Let's start with you, Ben.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think, I've mentioned it earlier on in the show here, but I think he's as close to a guarantee as you can get. Again, there are no guarantees when it comes to the 500, but I mean, you want to talk about what would be an absolutely shocking storyline to not even before the Indianapolis 500. If Kyle Larson gets bumped on bump day, we'll see what happens there. I think there could be some negotiations going on, although maybe not, because McLaren didn't try to purchase a spot for Alonso when it happened 5 years ago. But we'll see. I would expect him to be in the race, but you just never know. But if he does make the race, I think standout year. Obviously, he's only running the one race, the 500, but I think he's going to be a storyline, no doubt. I'm biased because I host this show called Grid Live Encore, which you can listen to Monday nights at 7 Eastern, 6 Central, 4 Pacific. Shameless plug there. But we talked a lot about Linus Lundqvist in 2022. We talked a lot about Christian Rasmussen in 2023 because of the performances they were putting in Indy Next. And Linus Lundqvist, I think that this opportunity that he has this year is long overdue. So if I had to pick one of these 4 drivers here that are going to be running, if not full-time, at least the bulk of the schedule here, I would have to say Lundqvist is probably the one to keep your eye on for who would be the most likely to have a standout season.
Yeah, I totally agree. Linus Lundqvist is driving the car that Marcus Ericsson has been driving the past couple of years, and that we know that is a very capable car. Won the Indy 500 just 2 years ago. Led the points standings quite a lot the past couple of years as well. Marcus Ericsson, super, super consistent. And Linus Lundqvist, I wouldn't surprise me too much if he ended up sneaking in a win at some point. Like, I don't know if he will, but he would contend for one. It wouldn't surprise me. Rasmussen's at ECR. I think that's a disadvantage for him, unfortunately. Tom Blomqvist, I mentioned earlier, I think he's going to be solid and fun to watch. Kiffin Simpson, I don't know. Kobe, you mentioned earlier, he had really good speed, or maybe Jackson said that, but it was just I don't know, because he's a rookie. I feel like he's really, really young. I don't know if he needed to be moved up to IndyCar just yet, especially in a 5th Ganassi car. And I said enough about Kyle Larson earlier. I think he's going to be excellent. But of these rookies, who's going to have the best season? It's going to be Lundqvist.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Alex. I also think Linus Lundqvist is going to have the best season out of all these rookies. And we saw last year in his limited starts with Meyer Grayson. Lundqvist was very, very impressive. A lot of people saw what he was doing, but like, wow, this kid is the real deal. And now he's going to be on a top tier ride with Chip Ganassi Racing. I think that's only going to help him excel, and we'll see what he's able to do throughout the season. And other rookies out there, I already talked about Kiffin Simpson, how he didn't really set the world on fire in Indy Lights. I mean, Indy Lights 2024. I'm still calling Indy Lights. Indy Next is what I meant.
We all are. It's okay.
Yeah, Indy Lights forever. And Kiffin Simpson, like I was saying earlier, he really has a lot to prove this year, that he deserves to be in the IndyCar series. We saw him do great things in sports cars, and maybe he can do great things in Indy cars as well. Christian Rasmussen, I think he'll do the best he can. Yeah, given the car that he is, Ed Carpenter Racing hasn't really, been the strongest on the road and street courses, but at the Indianapolis 500, obviously, as you guys were saying earlier, it's almost a guarantee to see at least one ECR car sitting on the front row for the Indianapolis 500. Rasmussen is going to be in a third car for Ed Carpenter Racing for the Indianapolis 500, while he's going to be in the number 20 on the road and street courses. And we'll see if that program can improve, so Rasmussen can show what he showed last year in Indy Next, and the potential that he has. Tom Blomqvist, I think it could be quite a year for him, and more like a learning experience, see what he can do. But it would not surprise me if we see Blomqvist have several good runs throughout the season. And last but not least, Kyle Larson already said, I think he can basically do exactly what Kurt Busch did when he ran the Indianapolis 500, potentially exceed what Kurt Busch did. It would not surprise me if Kyle Larson ends up being the Indianapolis 500 Rookie of the Year.
Yep.
All right, guys. Let us end this off then with a round of bold predictions for the 2024 IndyCar season. I'm not sure how many you guys have. I'm willing to just spit them out till we're dry. But Alex, let's kick off with you. What do we have for bold predictions?
They are all Andretti themed, as I alluded to earlier. First, Colton Herta is going to go winless again, 2 years in a row. I think he's just not going to be competitive, just like last year. Not going to be much of a threat. He's honestly, in my opinion, the weak link at Andretti, because Marcus Ericsson is a championship contender. He's going to win races. And you have Kyle Kirkwood, who relates to my second bold prediction in a second. Herta is just not on the same level as those two, in my opinion, right now. And Herta can totally flip a switch and all of a sudden be the number one guy at Andretti again and win races, contend for a championship. But he has not proved that to me in quite a long time. If he wins a race, it's just randomly he'll dominate it, and then we don't hear from him for like 4 or 5 races, right? Last year, we didn't hear from him at all. He was kind of irrelevant. And all that talk about him going to F1 just has never made sense to me. I know Andretti just had their F1 bid denied and everything, so it's not going to happen for the foreseeable future. But it just doesn't seem like anything's there with Colton Herta right now. And that could totally change. As I said, he could flip a switch and all of a sudden be back to how he was in his earlier part of his career. But yeah, he's going to go winless this year. That's my bold prediction for him. And my other bold prediction, I have 2 sticking with Andretti. Kyle Kirkwood's going to be a championship contender this year. I think he's going to win several races, and this F1 chatter, if Andretti continues to push, it's going to be shifted to Kyle Kirkwood, because I think he's actually worthy of going to F1 eventually. I think he's going to prove that this year. He's a lot more mentally focused. He's able to not ruin a race if something goes wrong. He's not crashing all the time like Colton Herta does. Kyle Kirkwood, I think, is going to prove that he's the real deal this year.
Wow, I don't know how I'm going to be able to top those bold predictions, Alex. But yeah, but I only have 2 bold predictions tonight. And my first one is, number one, Alexander Rossi is not going to be able to match Pato O'Ward, and then David Malukas. I think Rossi is going to be out of Aaron McLaren at the end of 2024. And in 2025, Callum Ilott is going to take that seat. So in 2025, we're going to see O'Ward, Malukas, and Ilott manning Aaron McLaren. And my second bold prediction is we're not going to see the hybrid powered engines this year. I think we're going to see them in 2025, but I still don't see this happening at all.
Could totally see that.
Yeah, so those are my 2 bold predictions.
I back both of Kobe's right there, 100%.
Sorry, I'm just still in shock from Alex calling Colton Herta the weak link. I mean, that's
he is. Look at the stats. He is.
All right, that's your opinion.
I think here's now. Let me throw something in here. Let's walk this line. Do we think Ericsson is truly going to outperform Herta in that?
Yes.
On that team, genuinely.
Absolutely. Colton's going to be like 12th or something in points all year, 10th, low top 10, and then Ericsson's going to be like top 5 all year.
I would say Ericsson almost struggles with the same inconsistency issues.
Ericsson has led the championships so much. He was the points leader for so long.
Because he got double the points for winning the 500.
For winning the 500, yeah.
Even last year, though, he was top 3 in points for the longest time. I know he got second, but there was no double points last year. He was still up there. And Palou was a monster.
Listen, Kyle Kirkwood was sensational all the way up through the USF 2000, Indy Pro 2000, Indy Lights at the time. He was phenomenal. He won 2 races last year. His best finish outside of those 2 wins was only 6th. So if you want to talk about a guy that's hot and cold, you want to talk about a guy that needs to prove the consistency. I mean, I like Kyle Kirkwood a lot. I don't think there are any weak links with this strong Andretti lineup that they've pinned down for the next several years. But I think if you had to pick a weak link, I don't see how it's Colton Herta over Kyle Kirkwood.
I will say this is the strongest Andretti team they've had since Ryan Hunter-Reay won their championship. Like, by far, this is the strongest Andretti's been. It's just when you look at these 3 drivers, Herta is the least likely one to win a lot of races, I think. Like, sure, he could dominate one or whatever, but like I just don't see. He's not a championship contender. He has never proved that. Not once.
From the bottom of my heart. Okay, no. To say he has never been a championship contender,
I have never bought into the Herta hype at all. Herta mania.
Lord.
No.
From the bottom of my heart,
he's overrated.
Alex, and with the utmost respect towards you, you saying a 23-year-old Colton Thomas Herta is washed is insane.
I'm not saying he's washed. He could, like I said, he could flip a switch and be back to how he was when he was like 18, 19 and winning all these races, right? And dominating them. But he has not shown that. He just has not at all.
He was third in points in 2020 when he was 20 years old.
Okay, but what's he done lately, though? What has he done?
Okay, we know Herta has the pace. What happens if he dials back the aggression and keeps it out of the wall?
That's what he needs to do, and that's what Kyle Kirkwood is more capable of doing.
And I think that's going to happen. I really, really think that's going to happen.
I would love to see that. I like Colton Herta a lot. Yeah, like that'd be really cool. But he just hasn't shown it.
He's had a couple down years. There is no denying he has not lived up to this kid is ready for an AlphaTauri seat in Formula One hype that we were talking about just a couple of years ago. But I still think he's immensely talented. I think he won his third ever race. You remember when IndyCar won Dakota? You remember when that was the thing?
That was
won that
extremely.
race, right?
Yeah, that was very impressive by Colton Herta. That was unbelievable driver by someone who just turned 18 years old. It was just unbelievable. And I guess this is where the Colton Herta hype started. When we saw him win his race, especially at such a young age, when a lot of kids his age, they're just getting into the Indy Next series. They're not racing Indy cars, but Colton Herta, was viewed as this generational talent. And I still believe he is that generational talent. He just needs to clean up a few things and continue to grow as a driver so he can get back to being, the Colton Herta that we thought he could be, someone who could be the potential next American Formula One driver. But to your point, Alex, in the last few years, he hasn't shown, really anything where we could say that, he needs to be in Formula One right now. But I believe if Colton Herta has a strong bounce back season, I believe that conversation could start again.
I don't want to make this worse than it is, but just the fact that you're saying all of this with 3 Team Penske signs behind you is just showing so much about where you stand. Pay no attention to this back here. I'm nothing. But okay, I'm done. Ben, give me your takes. I'm done with this. We're getting out of here.
I got a book called Indy Split behind me here, so I should really shut up. You want to talk about all the charter negotiations, everything?
No.
This better not be a bad. Oh man. One more point on this, and then I'll give. I think I've already given a bold prediction tonight, but how much of that has been Colton Herta versus how much of that has been Andretti? I think we've always for years we talked about the big 3, right? Penske, Ganassi, and Andretti. I've made the argument on these shows before. I think it's a tier 1A and 1B now. I think Penske and Ganassi are pretty clearly 1A. I think McLaren has entered the 1B conversation 100%. And Andretti has fallen back down there. So I think, you can talk about Colton Herta's mistakes all you want. I don't know that Andretti has given Colton Herta the level of equipment that you would expect out of a Penske or Ganassi the last couple of years either. So I think, again, I'm very excited for what Andretti have going for them this year. This is a fantastic lineup. Sometimes less is more. Sometimes you can say addition by subtraction. I think they're going to have a very solid year, and I think Colton Herta is going to be a big part of that.
And I will say though too, like removing the 29 car, if you're only focusing on the 3 cars, this is the best year best opportunity Colton Herta has to go back to how we all thought he would be for his whole career. And he is very, very young, obviously, but if he doesn't perform this year, I think I'm right, because this is their best opportunity, I believe, for Andretti. And I think Ericsson's going to perform well. I think Kirkwood's going to continue to get better. If Herta doesn't, then I don't know what else to tell you.
We called it bold prediction for a reason, but
exactly. That's why it's my bold prediction.
Going back, just addition by subtraction. Grosjean and Andretti. I think Josh Birch talked about it last year. And he got some blowback for that, but I think it's true. That was not a partnership that was working. Clearly, it was time to move on. And also the 29 car, like you just mentioned, Alex, Devlin DeFrancesco. Do you know how many top 10s Devlin had in 2 years? Not a 1.
Did he have any? Yeah.
Not a 1.
Remember when he randomly led a lap at Indy? That was random.
Jimmy Johnson beat him in points in 2022.
I think
Did
the
he?
real sign.
Wow.
Go pull up the standings. Jimmy Johnson
Oh my
finished
gosh.
higher in points in the IndyCar series than Devlin did. And listen,
Wow.
I've never met Devlin. Maybe he's a really nice guy. I don't know. It's nothing personal against him or anything. It's just for whatever reason, he could not show the potential that he showed in some of the lower series when he got into IndyCar with Andretti Autosport. So that ride going away, that gray cloud hanging over the entire team's head here with the lack of results that car was getting. This new slimmer lineup, I think, is going to be very, very strong for Andretti this year. And to your point, Alex, I'm fully with you on that. This is the strongest lineup that they have had in many, many years, going back a decade plus here. So we'll see. But
Absolutely.
I'm not going to take Colton Herta slander to the point where you're talking about him being a weak link. That I'm not going to allow. But if you want to respond to that real quick, and then we'll move on here.
But I just want to say also, you mentioned Rossi and Grosjean kind of being out at Andretti. Those two being gone from Andretti, that's another part of it. The relationship there seems a lot healthier with the current three. And I think Ericsson coming in is just really going to help this whole trio out. And yeah, I really do believe Colton, like I said, just really, really has to perform this year. I'm not saying he's out of a ride. Don't get it twisted. He's going to stay there. But he has to perform this year to see who wins this argument, Ben.
Hey, we'll play this back at the end of the year. We'll see.
Yeah, we'll end up seeing.
If Colton wins like 10 races, then like by all means, you were right, Ben. But
He's so good.
If he wins a championship, he's got the full 40 super license points, and the F1 rumors start up again.
Yep.
oh, I can't do that again. No, not again.
We are so down this birdwalk. Ben, for the love of God, give us something else.
Well, I already did, Jackson. Elio Castroneves is going to complete the drive for 5. I mean, how am I supposed to top that? I gave it. That's why when you want to know why I let that long sigh out, I was like, should I wait till the end of the show? Or should I give it now when we're talking about check? But I will. I do have one more thing to say here. There is one team that we didn't talk about when we were going through our rundown, and that's Dreyer and Reinbold. They come back every year for the Indianapolis 500. They got Ryan Hunter-Reay and Connor Daly coming back, and Connor Daly is obviously a fan favorite at the Indianapolis 500. I don't know if either of them are going to win the race. I mean, obviously, I'm picking Elio to win the race. I got to stand my ground here and ride that till the wheels fall off. At this point, with the prediction I gave earlier in the show, but I would not count them out from making some noise at the month of May this year and having a strong run. I think that's a team that, again, sometimes you could say maybe it's a disadvantage not running the full year because you don't get the data and track time coming into the big race, but then again, the counter to that is you put all your energy into this one race with 2 different cars and 2 different setups that you can try and practice and see what works best for you and then go all in. I think, they could definitely make some noise. They've got 2 very capable drivers behind the wheel. That's a team to look out for, as they have been in their history at different points in the month of May.
Love it. I would love to end with my 2 here, and I hope I will not get kicked suborbital with this. But it's okay. We want to talk drivers that are maybe on the chopping block and could potentially be considered as a weak link. Will Power, I think, is getting up there just because of how sneaky he's been. I know we've been talking about his consistency. But again,
so
let me, Ben, I need you to let me finish talking. Ben, I need you to let me finish talking.
I feel like I'm on first take right now.
And I swear I'm not.
We're on first take.
With how much young talent we've got coming into this sport right now, you can imagine that maybe it's time for a change for the captain. And I think if anyone is in a position to maybe exit and go to another team, bye, Ben. I think if anyone is in that position, I think it would be Will Power.
So basically, what you're suggesting is that Roger Penske ships Will Power off to IMSA like he did with Pagenaud and Castroneves.
I am saying he gets a drive for another team and then has the most insane season of his life and wins every single.
You got Kobe crying.
I've laughed so hard. I actually have tears in my eyes right now.
Oh man!
Oh no.
Okay.
So I want to know what Ben thinks because he's thinking a lot over there. Because I think that's more egregious than me saying Colton Herta is a weak link.
I'm not okay. And again, I'm not saying like you. I'm not saying that it's Jover for power. I'm saying that it's going to be. We might see a slight deterioration on his performance, and with upcoming talent, this is the way. Adam, I don't want to hear any of it. I just think that this is potentially where we start to see the decline. And if it's not this year, I could argue it's next year that Will Power moves on, whether that's somewhere else in IndyCar or, he stays with Roger and goes to IMSA. Ben, please absolutely annihilate me.
Stephen A's getting a sip.
Oh! We got the ball! Okay, no.
Okay, Jackson's running away.
Yeah, Jackson ran away scared.
I don't have to say anything. I don't have to say anything. The only thing I have to say is, Alex, I'm sorry I treated you so harshly for calling Colton Herta a weak link. There's nothing.
We can walk this line, Ben. We can walk this line right now.
It's not even worth responding. I like that you got the ball hop last. You're not forgiven for what you just said about Will Power, though. There's nothing to say. Go, Kobe, take this. I don't know what.
Kobe's crying. Like, I don't know.
What can I do with that? What can I do?
I don't even know what to say. I'm just gonna say, Will Power is. I think Will Power is the type of driver, is he's gonna be done when he's done. When he decides to call it a career, he decides to call it a career. I don't think it's gonna be, a situation, where Roger Penske lets go of Simon Pageant. Will Power has been, with Team Penske forever, and I think, Will has earned the right, kind of like a Scott Dixon, to decide, when I'm done instead of the team owner being like, hey, Will, we're gonna cut you this year. I at least think, Will Power is gonna hold on for at least several more years until Miles Rowe is ready to come up into IndyCar. So I think that would be the perfect passing of the torch. Since Will Power is Miles Rowe's mentor, and we have a lot of expectations of Miles Rowe heading into this year's Indy next season. So if Miles Rowe wins this year's Indy next championship, we could potentially see him in one of the Foyt cars given the Penske Alliance next year, and then then maybe a year or so after that, it'll be a perfect passing of the torch to see Moreau replace Power in that number 12. That would be poetic, actually.
Thank you, Ben, and thank you, Kobe.
Just be grateful that you're on the other side of the country right now and you're not visiting Boston.
And I say this with zero disrespect for Will Power. We're throwing out bold takes. You're getting a bold take, Ben.
He had 4 podiums still last year. I mean,
so, I don't know.
Go ahead.
Like, I don't think there is a weak link at Penske, and maybe I'm biased. You can say that, I guess.
There's one banner you're missing back there, and it's the 12.
You're not helping me out, Jackson.
I know.
I don't know. I think Kobe's exactly right. That's exactly what's going to end up happening. Is that Miles Rowe is going to end up being who replaces Will Power eventually. But it's Will Power has 2 championships to his name. Just one, we say 2 years ago. 2 years ago in a calendar, like not even barely over a year ago at this point. So I think it's way too soon to say this. When I said Colton Herta was a weak link, he hasn't won a race in over a year. He hasn't won a championship yet. I think I have a lot more to my argument, but man, Will Power, I don't agree, but I just don't think there is a weak link at Penske. I don't know. Like that's definitely bold.
Joe,
I applaud you for that.
Joe, you can pick up on this, and I would like to offer with this and I'm only naming this because of how we're describing these drivers, not in how they actually are, but the Battle of Mid. And I want to see a live update in points every weekend. Will Power versus Colton Herta.
And but Will Power's going to win that by like 100 points.
You're not helping your case, man. Will Power.
You're helping my case.
In the same sentence? Are you serious right now?
Guys, when you But Kobe and Alex worded it so perfectly. I'm just saying that this could be the beginning of the end for Power's time here. That's all I'm saying. And
So
again,
he's
I don't mean that they're actually mid. That's just the first thing that came to my mind.
You could say the decline might continue. You could say maybe he's won his last championship. You could say he might maybe have another winless year. You can't put Will Power and mid in the same sentence. That's not going to work.
I'm not. And I said that as a joke. And I'm not putting Colton Hurd in that category either. I'm not.
He said it as a
all right.
joke. I'm going to remember that excuse for next time I say something too out.
So I don't even know if y'all are ready for my last one here, and we're at a minute.
Oh,
there's another one.
Okay.
That was so we're gonna be here
That
2 hours
was
and
the
30
warm-up.
minutes.
Oh my goodness.
What's crazy? Okay, is Harvey getting a podium with Dale Coyne more or less crazy?
Oh well,
I don't know what
that
could
ain't
be
gonna
more
happen.
crazy than calling Will
but-
Power mid.
Okay, all right.
Harvey's
But do
gonna
I
get
want to
podium
win the
every
battle
second.
of mid? See, again, and win has numerous meanings there, right? Because like, if my driver's worse, what does that mean, right? So, I don't know.
Wait, so is that your second bold prediction that Harvey?
My
gets the
second
podium?
bold prediction is Harvey podiums with Coyne. I think Harvey has just the biggest pop-off season in general. Dale Coyne, again, I've said this earlier, is able to kind of bring the extraordinary out of drivers. We've seen it with Grosjean, and I think this is going to be a really, really big redemption year with him. I could easily see him. Oh man, yeah, I'm gonna say it. I could easily see this guy within the top 10 for the points. If he's on par with how he was with Shank, I could really, really easily see this guy consistently in the top 10.
He's not doing the ovals as far as I understand. So I don't know if that's mathematically possible, but I think that'd be awesome if Jack Harvey got a podium. I don't see that necessarily, but that'd be really cool, especially with how it looked like his career was really close to being over if he didn't bump Rahal out of the 500 last year. Yeah. So the rumors were at that point he was going to get removed from the car after that, but I think him bumping Rahal out kept him in for a little longer. But I don't see him getting a podium. That'd be really cool, though.
That was my understanding too. I don't know. I mean, obviously they just announced their lineup today, so I think there's still a lot up in the air. And I don't know if Jack Hart, if he goes out and gets a podium or a win at St. Pete. You know, maybe that changes things, and maybe he does end up running the full season. Who knows what's going to happen at Coyne? But to Jackson's point, he does have one podium. He got a podium with Shank at the IMS
Indy Road Course
in 2019. Yeah. So,
yep.
Yeah, I think that's a nice bold prediction, Jackson.
No comment.
All right, fair enough.
Okay, I'm gonna play us out of here because it's been 2 hours, and
I like it,
I
Adam.
think relationships have been severed. Bold predictions from Adam here. Scotty Mack wins on an oval and is your 2024 Indy champ. I like it. IndyCar announces a return to Richmond. I could totally see that. Only reason it didn't happen is COVID.
I would love that. I don't know if that'll happen though, just because it's a NASCAR track.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like that ship might have sailed. Unfortunately, that might be one of the casualties of the pandemic here. But and also because, you know, to the point Kobe brought up earlier in the show, you know, we've been hearing we want more ovals for years. We finally got a couple with Milwaukee, and now the big one, Nashville, coming back to end the season. That I cannot emphasize enough how much I'm looking forward to that. But I think you couple that with the fact that the series has come out themselves and said we want to shift to looking at street circuits and bigger markets in this country. I don't know. I selfishly would love to see it, especially given that this part of the country is starving for an IndyCar race, and even then, Richmond, Virginia is pretty far south. But it would still be closer than the current closest track for a lot of people here in the Mid-Atlantic and up on the East Coast and New England area as well. I'd love to see it, but I don't necessarily know if that's in the cards.
I'd love to see it too, but sorry, Kobe. If we were going to get an ISC NASCAR track, I'd love it to be Homestead. I know it doesn't make too much sense geographically and where it's at in the country. It doesn't really bring new people in, but Homestead would be awesome. And they've been testing there during this preseason, so that'd be really cool.
Could totally
And
see it.
Marshall Pruitt's been writing about a race in Denver for I feel like a couple of years now. So I feel like that's something that very well could end up happening, since they're going to be focusing more on street courses.
Yep.
Yeah, Kobe, go ahead.
Yeah. Any of you guys had a question about Jack Harvey's racing schedule? I have an answer for you. According to the Delcoin Racing press release, Harvey's going to be in the number 18 Honda for, I believe, 14 races this year, and then you're going to see. And then you're going to see Nolan Siegel run at the Thermal Club, the Acura Grand Prix Long Beach, the Honda Indy Toronto, and then also the Indianapolis 500. So
Gotcha.
Jack Harvey going to be in there 14 racing, and Nolan Siegel's picking up the rest. And then the number 51 with Colin Brown is basically who knows is going to be in that ride.
We're still waiting for the other half of that car. Yeah.
So Kobe, is it possible that maybe Harvey could pick up the 51 if he performs well in the opening race, and then maybe if he fills out his schedule that way? Is that a possibility?
I'm looking at the.
I almost think they
right
left
now.
that opening there.
Yeah, potential
for a reason.
Yeah. It looks, based on what I'm reading in the press release, it looks like I know Colin Brown's going to be in there for St. Pete, and then the Thermal Club, but nothing's been announced after that. And then the only other race is the number 18. The number 18 is going to be taken. Long Beach. That has been announced for the 51. Same for Toronto, and then. Then also the Indianapolis 500 hasn't been announced either. So I guess Harvey could potentially run the full season with Delcoin Racing and pick up those extra races in the 51. So I guess that's possible.
All right. So the 51 still has a tremendous amount to be confirmed here. So we'll see what happens.
And there's been reports, I believe it was Marshall Pruitt as well, that Catherine Legg might possibly get an Indy 500
right
with
yeah.
them.
Yeah.
So
would love to see
that's
that.
also on the table.
Heavy talk, but she
Yep.
is going to come back for the 500. So.
Yep. Regardless, guys, still a lot of potential news on the way, and we'll be with you guys every step of the way, starting tomorrow night, Grid Tonight with Kobe, Thursday, Women in Motorsports with Isha, Joe, and Ben, and of course, Saturday for the opening here at St. Pete, and of course, covering all things from that weekend. Again, we want to give you guys such a huge thanks for watching in this especially long roundtable. Again, a big thank you to all of our Patreon investors, and want to remind you can invest in the Grid Network by clicking on the link in the video description, or do a one-time investment through Buy Me a Coffee or through YouTube Super Chats. And of course, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon. Until then, we will see you tomorrow night for Grid Tonight with Kobe. And until then, for Kobe, Ben, and Alex, I'm Jackson Lambros telling you to let your passion fuel you. Long live the scuff. We'll see you guys next time.